It is our responsibility as parents to teach our kids about money. And if we don't know, because they're not learning about it in school, we didn't learn about it in school. It's our responsibility to teach them. And if we have no idea what we're doing, they're not going to understand either. And then they're just going to be in the same trap that we are now.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how easy it is for marriage to take a back seat. But unlike your parents' marriage, your marriage can feel good while raising kids and doesn't have to feel hard. It can look like having each other's backs, even flirting and looking forward to spending time with each other. And I'm here to help you. So join me here each week as we dive into what it takes for your marriage to become something you enjoy again, from how to handle conflict better and bringing that spark back into your relationship. If you're ready for your marriage to feel good again, this podcast is for you. Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. I am so thrilled to have today's guest, Eileen Joy, come and talk about money. Money is one of the biggest topics that really challenge marriage, especially if you and your spouse come from different ways of viewing money, using money, thinking about money. And so we're going to talk about what you may not have heard of, but is pretty prevalent in the coaching world, which is called your money story. So we're going to be talking about how your money story affects your marriage as well as your kids. And I'm so excited to introduce to you Eileen. Eileen, thank you so much for being a part of this show.
Thank you so much for having me today, Michelle. I absolutely love talking about money. So this is going to be such a good conversation.
I love it. Okay, so before we start, let me introduce to you Eileen and who she is. So Eileen is a money coach for moms and the founder of Money School for Moms. She makes money easy for moms and shows them how to create wealth, fill their bank accounts, be debt-free while still having fun, stop living paycheck to paycheck, and teach their kids how to have a healthy mindset around money and set them up for life. Her 11-year-old son knows more about money than most adults. That's incredible.
Amazing.
She's created an easy system that any busy mom can follow and specializes in working with high-achieving professional moms who are committed to investing in themselves and their children and know that money is their next step. Eileen has created a safe and comfortable environment to learn about one of the most avoided and taboo subjects with no more shame, guilt, or embarrassment. I love that so much. And it is so needed.
It is so needed.
Can you share with us where you live?
I'm originally from New York, from Long Island, and I moved to Atlanta almost 20 years ago. So I live in Atlanta, Georgia now.
Amazing. So tell us, why money? Like, how did you even get to this point where you're like, yeah, I'm going to be a money coach?
Yeah, so like the day I was born, I said, yep, that's it, money.
Like me, right? The day I was born, I was like, I'll be a marriage coach.
It all happened because of my divorce. When I was going through my divorce, I was interviewing different attorneys, and I said to all of them, I have heard word on the street is divorce is expensive, and I don't have that much. I mean, I've got money saved, but this is what I've got. Am I going to be okay? And they were all like, oh, no, you're fine. Everything's fine. Well, it wasn't fine. And so during my divorce, I ran out of money so fast. And then my attorney's office started harassing me. The accounting department was harassing me for money and telling me that they were going to stop services if I didn't pay them. And I had to come up with the money that I owed them and all this stuff. And so at the end of the day, I had to sell my house to pay for my divorce. And at the time, I was working with my sister-in-law, and the office became pretty uncomfortable. And so I had to find a new job. I left. I found a new job, and thankfully, I found an even better job. And then my son and I got into a really bad car accident. My car was totaled. We both ended up in the hospital. I'm still dealing with a neck injury from that car accident. And all of this was going on during my divorce and at the tail end of a bankruptcy. I mean, it sounds like a really bad country song. That was my life. And so at the end of the day, when my divorce was final, my attorney's office had seized everything of mine to make sure they got paid first. And so they sent me a check in the mail for all the money that I had left in the world, which was $347. And so now I'm a single mom with a 5-year-old. and how to get a new house, new job, new car, start all over with $347. And so my whole world became about money at that time. It was like, okay, well, now what? How am I going to do this? So one thing at a time, one foot in front of the other. My whole mantra is keep moving forward, right? And that's all I kept doing. I got the new job, got the new car, got the new house, got the new everything, started all over. And I bounced back so fast that all my friends started asking me, Eileen, how did you do that? What did you do? Because all of a sudden, it seemed, I had a fully funded emergency fund. I paid off that car. It was a 6-year car loan. I paid it off in 3 years. I completely repaired my credit. It's now in the 800s. I'm on track to retire early, completely debt free, all these things. And my friends are like, okay, show me. Show me. I want to know. And so I just started showing my friends, and then they started getting the same results as me. And then they started sending people to me. Eileen can help you. Eileen can help you. And then my son, he's so cute. He was like, Mommy, you really need to help other moms. You're so good at this. And I already was, and I'm like, you know what? You're right. This is a great idea. And so that's what I did. And that's how Moms Who Money was formed.
That is incredible. I know we have more to share on this episode, but clearly if you are having trouble with money, you need to reach out to Eileen. Okay? Because that's amazing. So let's get into it. Money story. For you and I, we know what that means. But for those who are like, what the hell is a money story? Like, are you going to tell me a story about money? Can you share with us what a money story is and why it is the key to unlocking wealth for you and your family?
Well, the money story is the key because it all begins when we're born, and we all have one, whether you know it or not, right? So pay attention, because your money story starts when you're born, right? And between the ages of 0 and 7 is when we start to be programmed and conditioned, and we're learning how to walk, we're learning how to talk, we're learning how to survive, we're learning how to be in our society, wherever you live in the world, right? You are shaped during those years. And then, of course, it never stops. It keeps going. But these are the years where everything begins, and it all lives in our subconscious. And this is how we operate until one day we have an aha moment and we make a change for one reason or another. So when you think back to your childhood, what was money like in your house? And how did you learn about money? We don't learn about money in school. It's not something that they teach, which is ridiculous. I can talk about that for 3 hours. But when you really think about it, the way we learned about money is from our parents and from our environment, right? Not at school, right? We learn about what's going on at home, whether we talk about it or not, whether your parents are fighting about it or not, whether it's completely avoided and never discussed, or if it's always being complained about. Oh, I got to pay the bills, the bills, the bills, the bills. And then you ask for something, you need a toy. When you're a kid, if you ask for no, you can't have that. Money doesn't grow on trees. And you hear all of these things, all of these messages you are receiving. And when I was growing up, it was always some form of no. I would ask for a toy, and my sister would ask for a toy, and it would be some form of no. And we heard money doesn't grow on trees more times than I can count. And, all these different things, we don't have the money for that. So when you think back to when you were little, what are the messages that you received? And this forms how you feel about money, how it shapes you to approach money as you get older. And if you really think about it now, is you've already programmed your kids, right? But the good thing is that you can reprogram them, right? You can rewrite your own money story. You can rewrite their money story, and you can do it together, which is the really fun part, I think. When you think about money in your house, money with your parents, like your own money story is shaped from what you experienced, right? So for me personally, in my house, my mom was a spender, still is. My dad, he had a gambling addiction, and he was also a spender. They both had great jobs. They both made great money. But at the end of the day, there wasn't any money because it was just gone. My mom would spend it. My dad would spend it. Then he'd go gamble. He spent so much money at casinos. Like, they actually would call him and comp him. They would invite him to the casino and comp him hotel rooms and meals so he would come play poker and blackjack and all
Do we
these
have the
games,
same dad?
right? Like, so you could relate,
Yes.
right? So, and then really bad things started happening with their marriage because of it. And also the tone of our household became because of that as well. And my dad, because he became such an avid poker player and all these other games that he played at the casinos, he started wiping out their accounts. And anytime money would be in the account, he would take it. He wiped out their retirement accounts. Anytime he got money, gone. And so the fighting in our house was ridiculous. There was furniture thrown, holes punched in walls. The fighting was so bad that my sister and I would just stay in our rooms with the doors closed because we didn't want to come out. And my sister actually ran away from home the day she graduated from high school. And I didn't talk to her for over 20 years after that. We started talking again a couple years before my father passed away when he got sick. And I don't even know my sister now. Like, it's still like, oh, I have a sister. Like, oh, it's so crazy. And it was all because of money. And so when I was growing up and my sister was growing up, we spoke about this. We both approached money as, ooh, get rid of it. It causes fights. It's bad. Just get rid of it. And we both became spenders because of it. Max out the credit cards, do all the things. So if you think about what happened in your house and what's going on in your house now, how do you feel about money now? And because we don't learn about it in school, everyone feels so much shame and embarrassment and guilt and so much anxiety about money. And it doesn't matter how much you have. We all have these feelings. I mean, I've worked with women who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, multiple six figures, and they still have the same feelings, right? It doesn't matter how much you have. You have to really understand your money story before you can understand your money.
Yeah, it is kind of scary how much impact we have on our kids from 0 to 7 because they're just a complete sponge. And while you're learning about how your childhood has impacted you and the parent that you've become, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I want to parent? And sometimes you do figure it out after your kids are older than 7 and you're starting to see it come out in their choices, in their perspective. And so I think awareness is always a good thing when it comes to you and your marriage, you and your kids, and just being intentional about how you choose to live. And money is such a big part of it. You can grow up thinking money is really easy to come by, and you can be raised with thinking money is hard to come by, and you're in that state of scarcity. That's a really big one. And I love that we're talking about this because this is the stuff that doesn't get talked about enough, because these are the motivators that are driving our behaviors around money. And instead of fighting with your partner about you spent too much, whatever it is that you're fighting about, talk about the deeper issues that are going on. Because I know now that my dad wasn't like, I'm on a mission to ruin my family's finances. No, that's not what it was. He grew up viewing money a certain way. He repeated the pattern. It wasn't something to take personally, but it did impact us on a personal level. And the same goes for all marriages. And so I love that you're making people aware of this concept of money story, because it can help people understand on a deeper level, what's really going on. Not oh my gosh, they're such an asshole for ruining things or making things hard. It's I don't think that's their intent. Is that the results of their behavior? Yeah, it's ruining things. But we have to approach these things with more compassion for us to see change. So
Mhm.
at this time that we're recording, we are less than a month away from Christmas. And Christmas or not, we are always spending money on things, right? Whether it's gifts, vacations, putting our kids in sports, thinking about financial planning, or emergencies come up, just life, right? Money is always a topic in homes. no matter the time of year. What kind of tips do you have that our listeners here can be like, okay, I can make this very simple, small tweak right now that's going to make such a huge impact on our finances?
Well, the first thing that we need to do is really realize how taboo money is. Because I can give you all the money saving tips, but you won't do any of it until you really tackle the tabooness of money. Because, first of all, money story, right? Get your money story down. And then normalize the talk of money in your house. I remember this one client of mine, she came to me and she was like complaining about her husband. That's all she did. He just takes all the money and spends it and spends it, and then there's nothing left. And I asked her, well, when you talk to him about it, what does he say? She's like, I don't talk to him. And I'm like, okay, well, here we go.
Yeah.
So it's becoming comfortable talking about money in your house, because if you want to save money, but your husband's spending it, or vice versa, then there's just going to be fighting about money instead of you saving money. Right. So step number one is normalize the talk of money in your house and become comfortable communicating about it. At first, it's going to feel so icky and so uncomfortable and awkward. And I know, because so many of my clients, they want to talk to their husbands or their partners about money. And they're so nervous about it because they've never done it before. It's just not a conversation. Or if it is a conversation, it always turns into a fight. So it's taking a step back and realizing that your partner has a money story too. And it's way different than yours. And now it's merged with yours. And now it's become this weird thing, right? And so it's really speaking with your partner and your kids about, hey, you know what? We want to save some money. Let's do that as a family. Because if it's only just one person trying and everyone else is taking it all, like if your kids are like, mommy, buy me this. And you're like, okay, and then your partner's spending over here and you're like trying so hard to save, but it's just gone, right? So the first part of all of that is communication. It's just talk about it first. And then you guys can come up with a plan of, well, what are you saving for? That's the next step. We're not just going to save money, right? You need a purpose. So what are you saving for? So for this time of year, it's holiday time. So most people are saving for the holidays. But the holidays come with so many layers. It's like, well, we have gifts and parties and food and all kinds of other things, decorations.
Christmas pajamas.
Yes, of course. And photos, right?
Yes.
And then like people in my neighborhood, they pay a company to put their Christmas lights up for them.
Wow.
I mean, that's like a whole other thing, a whole other level. If you really think about all the different costs that are involved around the holidays. And I actually was reading a survey recently that just for the holidays of this year, 2023, $969 billion will be spent, billion with a B, just between November and December
That's a
2023.
whole lot of money.
Right? So if you think about, well, I'm spending all of this, just take a step back and look at what you're spending on wherever you are right now, whenever you're listening to this episode, whatever time of year it is, and say, well, what do I want to save for? What's going on right now? Make a short-term goal. That's the easiest thing to do, because if you think about, well, I want to save for something someday, right? That's too far away. So right now, think about what's going on right now in your life, something you want to save for within the next month or two, and come up with a plan for it with your family and communicate. And that is the easiest place to start, because I can just say, well, put $10 away a week. But for what though? You need to have a plan and say, well, what am I saving for? And give your dollars a purpose.
Yes. And obviously, I'm in love that you said communication, because like that is my jam, right?
Key. It's key.
It is so key. And I think couples need to be talking about money and all kinds of things more often rather than being avoidant about it because they're afraid of how the conversation will go. Because if it doesn't happen, then things are just going to create more issues, right? You're going to create baby issues out of it, right? So tackle the actual issue. And the biggest thing that I've experienced when it comes to talking about money with my husband is learning to sit with my own discomfort and not project it onto my husband. Now we're at this point where we can talk about money from a very neutral standpoint, even if it's like something that we don't want to talk about. Like we're facing something that isn't a reality that we like, right? Like we're able to actually talk about it very matter of factly and approach it as a team. But before, years ago, oh my gosh, sitting down to talk about money stressed me the fuck out. I would cry. I would take things personally, and he would get mad, and we would start fighting, and the conversation wouldn't actually get finished. So, of course, it's really easy if you're experiencing this too to be like, I don't want to do that again. Why would I knowingly want to step into that dumpster fire and do it again? But here's the thing, the more you do it, the better you can get. So think about it as practice, and even give it some time afterwards and be like, how could we do it better next time? This is where the conversation went south. How can we prepare ourselves for a better conversation next time? Because either way, it's got to happen, right? It's kind of like one of those topics where it's like your parents are getting old and you got to talk about next steps, what they want. And even maybe with your kids, like, hey, when I die, this is what I want to happen. Not something that is awesome to talk about, but it's going to save so much headache, pain, heartache, frustration, you name it, by making this a priority. Okay, so if you need to, rewind, listen to what Eileen said, go reach out to her, talk about this with her so that you can get comfortable with it, because this is essential. And I don't want money to be the reason that your marriage falls apart. Okay, because this is very fixable, and maybe it's just a matter of learning how to do it more effectively, learning how to navigate the complexities of having a money conversation. Okay, so let's dive into the kid part. Okay, earlier you told me that your kid knows more about money than most adults. That is a bold claim. I believe you, but that is a really bold claim. So how can we as mom get on your level, right? What are the things that you think we need to be teaching our kids to help them have a healthier money mindset, a healthier money story, so that we can set them up for success? Because obviously we want that for our kids, right? Like we want what we didn't have and then some. So what are your tips on what we can do to set our kids up to be just as money wise as your 11-year-old?
Well, like I said before, normalize the talk of money in your house. That's really the key. And that's what I noticed when I was teaching my son about money. It was eye opening for me too at the time to watch him discover money, right? And like in my house, when I was growing up, we never talked about it. We were just being yelled at about it. We never had a conversation about it of actual learning. So with your kids, it doesn't matter how old they are at this point right now, just start. So if you've got little kids, there are so many kids' books about money on Amazon or in the library or wherever. Just start reading. If they're really little and you have like a playroom for them, you can get like a cash register and the little grocery cart with the food, and they can play store. You can play real store when you go to the supermarket. The supermarket is such an amazing place to learn because there's so many ways to learn. One of the things that I see all the time in the supermarket is moms with a bunch of kids that all she's doing, I feel so bad because I see her, stop touching your brother, stop hitting her, sit down, get in the car, put that back, and all the things, right? To alleviate that, give your kids something to do. Give them a job to do at the supermarket. Let them use the calculator on your phone. Say, look, this is how much we're going to spend today. Let's not go over this amount, and let them add it up. Tell them, go get this off the shelf. Tell me how much it is. And then you can have another kid punch it into the calculator, and then you can add it up. There's just so many things you can do. Going to self-checkout, going to the regular cashier checkout. So many different things. My son, when we go shopping, he gets his allowance every single week, and we have a money date, just like I suggest for couples to do. You also need to have a family money date. And then you have a separate one with your kids when you pay them, give them their allowance. And you sit down with them and you say, this is how much you have. And teaching kids about money these days is very challenging because we don't typically use paper and coins anymore. right? Everything's digital. And so it's really kind of meaningless. It's just numbers on a screen. It means nothing to them, absolutely nothing. So when I give my son his allowance, I give him both cash and digital money so he can understand both. That's another avenue you can go as well. And then, of course, I got him an Amazon wallet because everything I get from Amazon. But this wallet is amazing because it has zippers everywhere. You can't lose anything because when they're fumbling around with their wallet, everything's falling out, right? So you want to make sure that's locked down. And then teaching them to count change back and all the different things. Like, this is just the supermarket. And then opening up the conversation in your home and letting them understand what a money story is and that you want them to have a healthy money mindset. And they don't know what a not healthy money mindset is. And it's so funny because it reminds me of one of my clients who came to me. She has 2 teenagers. And she was like, she heard my podcast and was like, I think I messed up my kids.
Oh, we all.
She's like, please help. And she was so nervous because of her own money story that she felt like she just basically effed them up. And it turned out that she didn't. And that they had a very healthy money mindset and they wanted to learn about it and they were excited about it. And we actually all got together and it was amazing. But the thing is, like, just get them involved and let them know that other people don't normally talk about this, right? This is just something we're talking about at home because not every family is talking about money, right? So when my son goes to school and he wants to talk about it, everyone thinks he's crazy because no one knows what he's talking about. For example, we were at the park recently with one of his friends and we were having a picnic before they went to go play. And my son was talking to his friend about the stock market and they were talking about the difference between a bull market and a bear market. And he was teaching his friend. He was telling him what it was. He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then my friend looks at me and she was like, your son is amazing. It's like, I know, yours can be too. So let them know, look, I'm going to share some things with you that we're not going to share with our friends. These are the things you can share with other people. And these private things, like, this is how much money I make. This is my paycheck. This is how much the bills are in our house. And let them know this is how much things are. Get them involved. They need to know these things. These are life lessons. And the more they know now, the more they'll take with them as they get older and the more smart money decisions they'll make for themselves. And then teaching them how to ask the right questions when they're going to spend money or save money. One of the things that I do is teach the 4 buckets. And the 4 buckets are saving, investing, giving, and spending. Okay. And so I teach the kids, I teach all my clients, same. It's really that easy. So when we're thinking about our money and are approaching our money, we need to be thinking about all 4 of these buckets at the same time. So when we're teaching the kids, we teach them that too, is that when I get money, I'm going to separate it into my 4 buckets. I'm going to save some, invest some, share some, and then spend it. Right. And there's other things that you hear, like when grandparents or whatever give money to the kids for their birthday, and they always say, don't spend that all in one place. Right. But it's like you're teaching them that all they do is spend when you say things like that. Right. So if we can take a step back and show our kids that when we get money, we don't just spend it. Right. There's other things that we need to do with it because it is our responsibility as parents to teach our kids about money. And if we don't know, because they're not learning about it in school, we didn't learn about it in school, it's our responsibility to teach them. And if we have no idea what we're doing, they're not going to understand either. And then they're just going to be in the same trap that we are now, right? So teaching them that it is their responsibility to save for themselves. So right now, my son, he's saving for his own car. He's saving to pay for his own college education. He's doing all of this himself because I taught him how. And so now he's empowered with a financial education so that when he gets older, he can decide if he wants to work or not. He can decide what type of opportunities he'll have open to him. He will have the opportunity of choice and time freedom. He can choose to work. He can choose to go volunteer. He can choose to travel the world. He can choose. He will have the opportunity of choice. He will be a multi-millionaire by the time he's my age, right? And it's all because I started teaching him now. And it's just learning together. Like we were learning together. And now we're like this amazing power mom and son, you know? And it's really cool. It's really just a great feeling to know that my son's going to be fine. I don't have to worry. He's going to graduate from school and he'll be fine. He won't be coming home and mooching off me for years until he can finally take care of himself. Wondering, how am I going to afford a house? How am I going to afford a car? How am I going to live? Especially now with inflation, like everything's gone up, like way up,
So
right?
high. Just food
It's
in general
crazy.
is
Yeah,
crazy.
it's insane. Like, hello, Costco. Thank God for Costco right now. It's getting worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. But what I wanted to talk about more specifically was I have a teenager, okay? He's 14, and he's at the age where friends are becoming more impactful
Mm.
than us as his parents. So he's wanting to buy all kinds of different things and, the phrase keeping up with the Joneses. And I
Oh, yes.
know that adults can do that too, right? Whether it's keeping up with the latest trends or making yourself feel like you have to do things a certain way, right? Like, oh, I have to do Elf on the Shelf. Like, I personally have a gripe against that thing. Whoever made that up is evil. Okay. But
I
we don't do
agree.
that in my household because I don't subscribe to putting unnecessary pressure on us as parents for things that are not meaningful for us. But anyway, how do you suggest that we teach, or if someone's listening here and they're like, oh, actually, I do that. I have this need to keep up with the Jones. How do you help your clients work through that and almost put up blinders against that?
The Joneses. Oh, the Joneses. So the Joneses, I found out, started from a comic strip that was back in the 1950s in the newspaper. So there
Okay.
was this family called the Joneses, and then their neighbors. There was the nosy neighbor who was always peering through the window, staring at Mrs. Jones. What's going on over at the Joneses today? And she was always envious of whatever Mrs. Jones had. And that's
Ooh.
how it started. And so now it has snowballed into what it is now: social media, movies, all the things. And so, because we're constantly bombarded with the internet and our phones and all the
Mhm.
things, we now have this disease that is way more contagious than COVID. It is called comparisonitis, thanks to the Joneses, right? So we are constantly trying to keep up with the Joneses, seeing what we see, right? And our reality on our phones, my reality, totally different than yours, right? What I see on my phone, not what you see on yours. Not one person sees the same thing every day. We're all stuck in our own weird, random, algorithm made reality, right? We think about one thing, it shows up on our phone. We talk about it, it shows up on our phone, right? There it is. You can buy it right now. And we're all just brainwashed, basically. And once we really realize this and we open up the conversation to it and we open up our mind, and I always want everyone to think this one thing: what do I want? Because that's the most important thing in the world. What it is that you want. And this is a great conversation to have with your kids. Ask them what they want, what's important to them. Because I was speaking with one of my clients the other day, and she was telling me that, like, her daughter's really little. And so we were talking about savings goals for her daughter. And she's like, well, she only wants this like $2 thing. And I said, well, that's important to her. To you, it's this $2 little, not important thing. But to her, that's everything. And you need to let her have that. You need to let her save for that. That's her goal. And you need to realize that that's what she wants. And it's those things. It's like going inward instead of outward, and just constantly comparing yourself and feeling like shit all the time that you don't have what everyone else has, and letting your kids know that this is important too. You don't need to have the latest and greatest iPhone. You don't need to have the latest and greatest gadget or sneakers or whatever the fashion trend is. You don't need it. And teaching our kids like the difference between needs and wants. And this is part of that conversation. And this is what will shape them over time and will let them think differently about things than their friends do, which then also will help them pick different friends over time too,
Oh,
right?
we're going through that right now.
Yeah, because your top 5 is really important, right?
Yes.
And so it's really important for them to understand, especially at that age, because my son's 11 now and he just started middle school. And these are like the hardest years of your life, right? Before high school, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Hardest. And this is when the kids succumb to peer pressure and their bodies are changing and all the hormones and the things and everything's happening. And being there for them at home, even if you're just listening, just be a shoulder. And it's really teaching them the right questions to ask themselves to feel empowered from within. And that's going to help them with everything, just with their friendships, relationships, their money, everything. It's just us being there for them as parents instead of like dictators and telling them, you have to do this, you have to do that. And then also now letting them make money mistakes now when things, when the stakes are low, and you can give them their allowance, or when at this age now they're going to start working, right? So when they get their job, they need to understand they're not spending every penny. They're going to have those 4 buckets, right? And learning how to use those 4 buckets, especially now when the stakes are low, let them make their money mistakes on their own and know now before it's too late, right? And then making those huge money mistakes that we've all made. I should raise 2 hands and my legs, right? Like we've all been there. So let's help them to not make those mistakes and learn the right questions to ask so that they can navigate through that in a healthy way.
I think how we live and how we're raising our kids, it really comes down to teaching them how to be critical thinkers as well as being intentional for their own goals. Like my teenager spends all his money on food and going to Target, buying candy, going to Chipotle. So it's all about doing things when he's out with his friends. And then he wants to buy something. It's like, well, do you have money for it? No, because this stuff adds up.
Yeah, well, a great thing to teach him is that it's not about what you have, it's what you keep.
Right.
Right? So when you're using all 4 of those buckets, everything is fine. And you can spend what's in your spending bucket,
Right.
but leave everything else for what its intended purpose is.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, go to Chipotle, do all the things, go shop, go to Target, whatever, shop till you drop, use your spending bucket.
Right.
But everything else needs to be over here. You're not touching that.
Right.
Right? Then it doesn't matter. He can spend whatever he wants on, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. You shared so much. And this is going to be something that listeners are going to have to digest, probably re-listen to over and over and over again, because this is really important for everyone to understand, bring awareness to, change how they're approaching money and finances, because this is all about working smarter, letting your money help you with your goals, not letting it be a source of stress, because it is completely preventable. So, what are the best ways for people to connect with you?
The easiest way is through my website, momswhomoney.com. You can find me everywhere. All my socials, you can contact me through there. My website is the best place. My podcast is also through there as well. It's also called Moms Who Money.
So if you loved what you learned here, the conversations that we're having, and you're like, I need Eileen's help, or I want to learn more from her, go check out her stuff. And if you want to work with her, go reach out to her. Let her know that you found her from the show. And I want to thank you so much, Eileen. But before we leave, I want to ask you a question. I always love to ask guests a question so that our listeners can get to know you a little bit better. So, what is your favorite way to make money fun?
Ooh.
This is not normally a question I ask, but I was like, let's make this money related.
One of the things that I love personally, and what I always have my clients do because it actually becomes fun for them. Like at first they're like, what? But it's actually watching your savings account grow. And so I do savings challenges all the time with them. And it really is fun because it's like when you get on the scale and you're trying to lose weight and the scale goes down and you get so excited, right? You like let the scale dictate your day, right? If you weigh yourself first thing in the morning and you gain like a 1/4 pound, you have like a shit day, right?
Yes.
But the great thing is is like when you have a plan to save money and all you see are the numbers going up and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have a purpose that you're saving for, it is the best feeling because most people save for a vacation or like a girls'
Yeah.
trip or something. And it's just so exciting because it's like at the end of it, you get this really amazing reward.
Yeah, yeah. And it's almost like gamifying it, right? I feel like that really helps a lot of
Hmm.
people when you turn it into a game. I've seen people print out those meters that you like color in, almost like those fundraisers, right? Like, oh my God, we're almost
Yes.
there. I love that so much.
Yep.
So I hear you have something for our listeners. Can you tell us more about that?
I do. It is a guide that I have. It is called 6 Steps to Money Smart Kids. And I have gotten the most amazing feedback from this guide that it's such a perfect place to start with your kids. And it doesn't matter how old they are. So you can find this guide at momswhomoney.com/kids.
I'm going to have to go check that
Yeah.
out. Thanks so much
It's
for
so
sharing
awesome.
that. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. All right. Thank you so much, Eileen, for joining us and sharing all your great tips. I cannot wait to hear what listeners got out of this episode. So if you love this, go check her out. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was, and I'll catch you back here next week. Bye. That's it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. I would so appreciate that. And if you love what I share here, then you're going to love and want to join my free private Facebook community that's also called Marriage and Motherhood. I hope to see and connect with you in there. Otherwise, I'll catch you back here for the next episode. Bye.